Hello world, welcome to a Junk Value Update Deck Tech. I'm Ginger Ale, here with a similar list to what I made a video back in the Ravnica era. This was designed originally by J.D. Emmerich, worked with him in the original list, and it has blossomed and developed from there. It was made in the beginning of Return to Ravnica. Used to have Centaur healers in this spot. Putrefy wasn't out, so there was 3 Abrupt Decays. Obsidat wasn't out, so we had 3 Sigardas. Most everything is standard. There was 3 Thrag Tusks. I think there was an extra. There may have been either an extra Abrupt Decay or an extra Disciple. I think there was an extra Abrupt Decay, and then of course the sideboard had changed a lot. But in this update, things have changed. Some really good cards have came out, enough to tilt it, change it up in a really similar but also unique direction. If anything, the deck has been getting better, and as the meta has changed, it has stayed powerful enough to do well. So I consistently do well at FNMs. Not that that's a complete test of the deck, but I also played it at SCG Nashville. I did somewhat well. I wrote a little bit about it on my blog, tnsgingerale.com. It'll be in the description. May have a link up here. I'll also have a link to the first video when I first talked about the deck. But yes, things have changed. -2 Abrupt Decay, the addition of Putrefy hits a little bit more stuff. I keep an Abrupt Decay in here. It's still very valuable in game 1s against aggressive decks. Still hits some Detention Spheres. Still has a lot of utility, hitting 3-drop planeswalkers like Domri and Liliana. So it still does a lot of work. You can see on the side I have extras of both of them, so we can get to that later. I've been bouncing back and forth between 2 main O-rings and one on the side, one on the main. The lack of Abrupt Decay and the competitive decks right now is what makes me continue to play O-ring. Since Putrefy's came out, at one point these were not in here, or I just had them in the side. It's one of my best ways to deal with planeswalkers. But since Putrefy's came out, Abrupt Decay has been a one of in list or a one of in the side, not even some in main. So Oblivion Ring, it was still very strong, especially at the SCG tournament. Though many surprised faces, but it's a 3 mana cost, grab anything, and I don't have to really worry about it being destroyed. Smiters have been a healthy replacement for Centaur Healer. I didn't think it was going to be better. I just wanted to try it out. A 3 mana 3/3 with gains 3 life seems on paper better in an aggressive matchup, but Smiter has been even better than I had imagined it possibly to be. So, being a 4/4 helps a lot. It doesn't block most things, trade with the other half. It now blocks everything in those aggressive matchups and forces them to use a removal spell in addition to a creature dying or a Gore Clan Rampager, forcing them to play it. So that can sometimes take up their turn, and a lot of times Smiter is worth it. At the same time, can't be countered. Does well against Sire of Insanity, which is seeing a lot of play in Jund, and 4-color Reanimator. So putting it down is pretty cool. I got sired at SCG Nashville, just playing some extra games with a guy, and he sired me with 3 Smiters in hand and just scooped. So it's kind of weird when you play your bomb you think you're gonna wipe my hand with, and then you're like, oh well, I'm dead now. So some cool effects with that. So Smiter does a lot of work. The Sivers have still been good. There's a lot of times where you can hit. The Thragtusk works really well with Garruk Primal Hunter, making 3/3 beasts. Garruk Relentless makes 2/2 wolves along with like Huntmaster, so a lot of times you can hit all those tokens at once. That's not, I mean, that's kind of a corner case, but against aggressive matchups, sometimes there's 2 1-drops that they've played, and you've played a Pilgrim on 1, and you get into a early, a turn 3 Sever, and you grab 2 or 3 dudes. That happens quite a few. 4 mana is worth me taking out 2 dudes. Also, exiling is very, very relevant in this meta with a lot of Reanimator going. So Oblivion Ring and Sever are doing a lot of work. Another reason why not as many Putrefy, Abrupt Decay type effects are in here. Destroying just doesn't do a lot right now. Decipherable Bolus, of course, the powerhouse of the deck. Its best friend Thragtusk. I don't think I play it for the reason that everyone else does. Of course, I enjoy the benefits of the life and stabilization and the double the dudes, but it's really just there for Disciple Bolus. Mainly there for the Disciple Bolus. Of course, he does a lot of cool things, of course, with the Restoration Angel and all these antics that you already know about. But Disciple Bolus is his prime. It's Disciple Bolus' prime target, and by sacking a Thragtusk, getting a 3/3, drawing 5, gaining 5 usually puts the game away. While also drawing you into either an Angel or an Unburial Rites, or an Obsidet for next turn or whatever. Just puts you well ahead and keeps more cards in your hand than your opponent's. So if you didn't know the synopsis of the other deck, I'm basically grinding, trading, gaining life until I have more cards in my hand than you, and then I will win because I have more cards, I have more threats. And I can continue playing spells. That's basically the deck. There's no crazy combo or anything. It's quite grindy. It's really beneficial that I've played with this so long, because I can play it very fast, even though I still run into some opponents that aren't quite sure what they're doing. So there is some draws that happen. Thragtusk Wars and Angel of Serenity Wars can push draws pretty quickly. Minusing 2 Sigardas and adding 2 Obsidets have been great. Obsidet is a powerhouse in the control matchups, and a lot of decks cannot deal with him due to only having sorcery removal. At the same time, it has pushed my mana to its limit. There's some games where he has sat in my hand a couple extra turns to where I cannot cast him when I want. That happens with playing a somewhat greedy-ish mana base, needing or having to have turn 1 and turn 2 green sources, while also needing triple white later, double white at 5 for both Obsidet and Sigarda, and double black. 5 really pushes every card being playable exactly when you want it to, but I don't think it's hindered it enough or lowered the consistency enough to decrease the power. It's just lowered a little bit of the consistency and increased the power. So a give and take for sure. But the 2 Unburial Rites are great. Again, it's called value. I'm just sacking, putting things in the graveyard, trading, and then I'm getting them back with Unburial Rites. That's not the emphasis of the deck. I'm not trying to get a rights every game. I don't need it to win. It's just there for value. I only run 23 creatures, which is quite a bit, of course, but being these Unburial Rites is kind of like 4 extra Restos or Thrags or Bolus or Smiter or any card. It increases the power of these other cards, and it gives me I don't have fear about going to combat or blocking, because knowing that I have a rights in my hand, knowing if something goes bad or they have a trick or something, or they pump their creature enough to where mine dies and their stays, I know that like this rights is good. So there's a lot of times it's like a safety blanket when it's in my hand, and it helps me be a little bit more aggressive when I block or trade off creatures, because I'm more okay with my creatures dying than my opponent usually is. Angel Serenity is a lot of work. It's the same as the value that I talked about earlier with Disciple Bolus and Barrel Rights. It doesn't go into a loop a lot, like the Infinite Loop or whatever. I don't play 3. It's not the emphasis. It's just to get a huge dude with 3 of mostly my creatures, or like one of their tokens and a couple of my creatures. A lot of times, if Angel blocks the creatures on their side, if there's not too many, then most of the time I just get my creatures. Sometimes she'll grab a problematic creature like a Falcon Wrath that's got some counters on it, or it'll hit an Olivia or something, or a Nighthawk. There's some prime targets, but a lot of times, like if there's a Thragtusk over there, I'm just like, I don't care. Like if you want to use a card to trade with Angel Serenity, that's fine. I'm getting cards back in my hand. So she's phenomenal. Having a 6 butt is pretty huge, especially with Thragtusk and a lot of the green decks. Let's go to the sideboard. Well, let's quickly go to the lands. I got 2 Cavernous Souls. Right now, I bounce back and forth between Ghost Quarter and Cavernous Souls, to killing utility lands like sometimes the Vault and token matchups, or another Gavany, or a Drown Yard was really big at one point, which is when I switched them out the first time. But right now, these Cavernous Souls are more mana fixing than anything. There are some decks that are starting to play a little more counter spells, but it's less about the can't be countered. It's more about the mana fixing for my greedy mana creatures. The 2 Gavanys are great. I would not recommend going to 3 or really down to 1. I wish that I could afford to go to 3, but I don't think the deck can do it. I don't, unless you cut a Cavern. But this seems really loose. 2 is great. It takes away some games. It helps me not have to commit my board state, or too many creatures on the board state. It makes fighting really awkward. It makes when they go to Mizium Mortars my Smiter, and I can Township in response because they forgot about Township, or I can block my Resto to their Resto and then Township, and then mine stays and theirs dies. There's a lot of really cool trades. It doesn't work very well with Thragtusk, but I mean, whatever. In the sideboard, Deathroot Shamans for Reanimator and Control. It's pretty self-explanatory. Abrupt Decays come in for like aggressive matchups like Blitz and whatnot, and stuff like Sever and Angel Serenities will come out. Sometimes Sigarda as well. It's kind of according to what type of aggro it is. Most of the time the life gain is relevant enough to stay in these 5 spots. Sometimes maybe 1 rights will come out as well. Like I said, I've went against a lot of different variations of decks. I don't want to just pigeonhole the ones that are currently played at this moment. I just want to give you a general basis against most of the archetypes. So if these archetypes change, while these cards are still legal, you can still understand why these cards are here. So yeah, Abrupt Decays against those. A lot of times you don't have to keep them in against, like, if they have Lily and it's like the only good target for it, that's not really worth keeping it in. You just need to find a way to get rid of her. Sometimes keeping one in is fine, just for utility purposes. Barter and Blood is for the Bant Enchantments matchup. I haven't got to play against it a lot, but I really can't think of anything better than Barter. It's definitely what I want to be doing. They usually don't go over 2 creatures, but they usually do have 2 creatures down just in case a sacrifice effect comes. They can sack their weak guy and not the one they have all the enchantments on. So Barter and Blood does a really good job with that, and the same way I can ramp into it without too much fear, maybe only losing 1 mana doing so. Of course, like a Barter and Blood and Farseek is just like a nut hand against them. But yeah, it hasn't got a lot of testing, but I definitely see it better being than Devour Flesh. Doesn't do enough. It's just 1 creature. It's Also, Abrupt Decay comes in against those to hit those pesky enchantments, the cloaks, or the Rancor if I don't need it to have trample, or the Ethereal Armor if whatever, or the Spectral Flight, just whatever I need to get rid of to benefit me. That's what that hits. Because I can't target the creature, so all the creature removal like Putrefy and Sever is coming out. Sin Collector is against Reanimator and Control. Against Reanimator, it exiles their Unburial Rights, or their, sometimes it'll hit a Mulch or a Grizzly Salvage, but whatever, not that big of a deal. So it hits those. It, of course, hits Sphinx's Revelation, which is a big card. It can hit a Doge effect. Hits a lot of cool stuff, and at the same time, I don't mind Discipling in a way, or Unburial Rights in, or whatever. So the 2 powers, not the worst. It's enough to where Disciple's okay doing that. Garruk is kind of a surprising card. He comes in against aggressive matchups and control matchups, not so much mid-range. The control, making dudes in these control matchups, a lot of times I go through my game plan on my first 3 or 4 turns, and then after a Doge or a Terminus or Supreme Verdict or whatever hits, that's when I land a Sigarda, or I land an Obsidat, or land, one of those. And Garruk kind of does the same thing as Sigarda. Them, it decreases the power of their sweep effects. So there's a lot of times you can do that against control-ish matchups, and then against aggressive ones, which I guess I kind of skipped over. It shoots almost anything. It makes them attack Garruk. Sometimes if I have one blocker, they have to send both their dudes to Garruk to kill him. It can net me some life. It can also continually make 2/2s, which blocks a lot of their creatures. It does a lot of cool things. Makes 1/1 Death Touch guys, which trade with anything. Against that matchup, a lot of times there's not a time where I sack to get a creature because he's usually dead by then. But in the control matchups, sacking a creature, is usually a-okay with me. Hitting an extra Pilgrim or hitting a Thragtusk and just getting a 3/3 after. Thragtusk swings, hits you for 5. I sack it with the flipped Garruk, get a 3/3, and then go grab another Thragtusk or an Angel or whatever I need. Sigarda, I kind of explained about the control type effects. And very, very good against mono red. Sigarda is balling against mono red. Terminus is for Jund aggro probably the most, because they have very resilient creatures with like Undyne and Scavenge type effects. So a lot of times trading doesn't do a lot against them. So Terminus pulls me out ahead quite quickly against that matchup. But to be honest, these don't come in a lot and need to be miracled most of the time, because if I've ramped to it, a lot of times if I made it to that part of the game, I have a good enough board state to where I don't need to Terminus. So these are sadly a little mediocre in just this build of a deck, but Terminus is a very powerful card. I used to have Witchbane Orbs, but the Jund matchup is so good for me, I really don't need them. It's kind of a please don't bonfire me sideboard card, which a lot of times I'll take out a card that I probably need, because I honestly don't really sideboard except adding a Putrefy against Jund. Right now, just being able to kill Olivia is probably my only thing that I have to keep in mind. Sire doesn't really hurt me with like rights and whatnot if I keep those in. Sometimes knowing that they run a ground seal or one of those effects, I honestly don't mind siding out these rights at all. Quite a few times I get misboarded against people thinking that I'm a Reanimator deck when I'm not. So that gives me an edge in quite a few matchups, because I'm playing a rogue-ish deck, a rogue type build. It pulls me ahead against a lot of matchups that sideboard wrong, which is a good benefit. But the Tragic Slips is something that I wanted to try out. It goes along with the extra removal, the same that I can have 3 mana and I can Abrupt Decay and a Tragic Slip. It's also black though. Like Abrupt Decay into a Tragic Slip means on turn 3 I have 2 black, which doesn't always happen with my land base. So it's just a thought. I'm not really sure. It also gets rid of the aristocrat if the Jund aristocrats or junk aristocrats amplifies any more than the Dragonfire aristocrats. The white, black, red is kind of falling out of favor, and the junk is aristocrats is gaining some. But a lot of with like the Scar Striped, you can hit him with this. So this is an option. Also in the control matchups, this is what I really want to try out. I tried it out in game day, but didn't play against any control. There's a lot of that value that we were talking about, but the biggest matchup it's actually against is the mid-range matchups, the decks that also run Angel of Serenity and Thragtusk, to where we're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and Restoration Angel, to where we're value. I gain a bunch of life, you gain a bunch of life, you take 10, I take 10, whatever. Just kind of beating our creatures together, just button heads, and then it usually results in a draw. The fact that we both get to the point where we can cast 2 spells a turn or whatever. I wanted to try out Deadbridge Chant to say, hey, I can cast 3 a turn, possibly. So, also giving a little bit of fuel for Unburial Rites, if that's a strategy that's good against the deck that I sided in against. So something I want to try out, because I know that I have 16 in sideboard right now, but these 3 are just the extra options that I've been thinking about. Also, possibly another Garruk. Garruk's been pretty good. Or going down to 1 Bottle of Blood, because Banned Enchantments is falling out of favor. But if I do get matched up against that Enchantments deck, it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough. I really need a barter effect, because then I'm very dependent on having Abrupt Decay at the key moment to get rid of, their creature, and hope that they don't have another one that's evasive that they can suit up. So that is the updated deck tech of Junk Value, nicknamed recently Craigslist, for so much value, I suppose. This list is also on my blog. I wrote a tournament breakdown, I suppose, on SCG Nashville, running this list, except for these were our Witchbane Orbs, and check that out. Got another couple articles coming out this current week. I'll link all of the extra stuff in the descriptions. Please check out the blog. I've just set up a donate button. If you are financially able, I would love, if you enjoy the content, it would help me out a lot of continuing to write and giving the time to write and provide more content. Also helps me maybe possibly get to some events and meet some of you guys. So it's used for the greater good, and hopefully will be used to help me survive, or give me an opportunity to give back to you in some way, because if there's a somewhat decent inflow of donations, then I can take less shifts at work and provide more content, which is kind of the goal in the future. So a little bit of breakdown. TNSGingerAle.com is the blog. Check out the newest Tap and Sack episode, episode 41, with a special guest, Dragon Maze champion Craig Wesco is up. So check that out. Really fun episode to cast. Also, subscribe here. Give me a like. Give me a comment. Give me some opinions on any suggestions on the deck, or suggestions for Tap and Sack. Follow me on Twitter at TNSGingerAle. Also will be in the description. All that good info. And if you want 5% off Magic singles, go to oasislc.com and type in Tap and Sack, all one word, to get 5% off those goodies. So until next time, see you fuckers.